Last night watched Hayao Miyazaki's 2004 movie Howl's Moving Castle because at some point we're gonna lose Netflix because we're gonna no longer have it. So yes, we're gonna get through the rest of our Miyazaki films. Um, yes, again, you watch Miyazaki film and you just are kind of stunned by the imagery. Um, you know, how is this bird, the little Swiffer dog heen, um, the gorgeous vistas, the castle itself, Turnip Head, um, the Wicked Witch of the West, or whatever her name is, or the Witch of the West, of the East, um, with all her kind of like her going up the stairs and kind of almost melting, roiling fat. It's like there are maybe some issues. I don't know. It's interesting. In the story, it's kind of set in kind of a magical early 20th century kingdom, which is at war, going to war with another kingdom. Um, it's got kind of a lot of steampunk and airships, and also magic. You've got this castle. We have magicians who are being enlisted in this war as well, and also gunships, iron gunships, and stuff like that. And ghouls, black, top-headed, black ghoul, liquidy, amorphous, mergy uh, um, henchmen of the wicked witch. Um, we get this young girl who's sort of an old soul already. She's a content milliner, hat maker, working at her deceased father's store. Her mother sort of breezes in every once in a while, not very much because it's a Miyazaki film and the parents, are children and fools and clueless or dead. Kind of slightly Disney likes to kill off its parents, and Miyazaki usually likes to push them to a side in favor of the young protagonist. But she gets cursed by this witch, who's kind of like, it's got this kind of rakish hat and is a large, almost like kind of one of those big ladies from in Marx Brothers' Night at the Opera, where there's like, oh, whoa, lady, but and she curses her and turns her into an old woman, um, um, which strangely enough is sort of viewed as almost as a positive freeing thing. But you also get the kind of this wicked witch going up the stairs to meet, supposedly to meet the king or the prince, and she like melting and being kind of this figure of kind of like body horror of like, oh my god, you're a fat older woman, and it's just like, it's kind of gross. And indeed she gets melted away until she's a shriveled older woman, um, selfish and all hunger. There is that thing of like fairy tales where you literalize everything, you dramatize everything as literal, which can sometimes do the thing of like, well, if you're fat, you must be greedy. If you're ugly, you must be evil. Which isn't really a great message. But then we have Sophie, who, though with Sophie, it's interesting because the more she loves, the younger she gets, which maybe that's another literalization there. It's one of those interesting things you wonder about it. Oh, and there's an opening scene of Sophie as a young girl walking through the thing, and basically she gets cornered by a couple of soldiers who, it's really like, okay, this is about to turn into a rape scene at the very start of this family-friendly film. But then Hal sweeps in and rescues her, and I think he says, oh, they're not really that bad, which is like, okay, are we excusing a couple of soldiers who had cornered a young teenage girl, and we're saying, hey, we're going to have fun with you? It's like, that seems to be pretty horrific little thing there. But it is Miyazaki. It's just like he is the Ovid of our times, of the natural and kind of earned transformations. The transformation, her from transforming from a young woman to an old woman. The transformation of the little boy who has this kind of silly disguise that turns him into a very kind of fake-looking old man. Hal turning, from a person into a bird. it does hit its anti-war messages pretty hard, maybe making it lesser, a little bit more blunt than all other Miyazaki films. Though it does have one scene where it talks about how, you know, wizards who did answer the call of the prince have transformed them into themselves into horrible beasts, and the little fire demon, which in the English version is voiced by Billy Crystal, says, you know, they're going to really regret that because they're not going to be able to change back now that they've turned themselves into these monsters for war, which is like, that's kind of war in a way. Is tragedy of war is a lot of people who sacrifice themselves for it, whether it's good or ill-advised, or, you know, however you view it. There's a lot of people who get consumed, get turned into, it destroys them, it turns them into something that's capable of killing another human being, and they get to the end of the war and they find they can't change back to what they were beforehand. It's like it changes them forever, which maybe is maybe the most powerful little line in there on that theme in the thing. There's that cave of dreams with him, with Howl at the very end of it, as transformed into a bird creature, and Sophie being kind of going down this kind of detritus of what you kind of imagine is the inner landscape of his life, maybe as him as a child. There's the whole thing, stuff you just don't even understand at this point, like how that his heart was taken by eating this, you know, taking this being into him and getting the fire demon. Things like I haven't even wrapped my head around, which is lovely because it'll just have to sit there and percolate until I go, oh, because that's what happens in Miyazaki films. You just end up going, oh, wow. Which is why, you know, obviously he is a giant. So yeah, that's my impressions of Howl's Moving Castle. More videos later.